Hey, have you ever received feedback that took the wind right out of your sails?
Yeah.
I don't know, like a job interview,
Oh
or
my
not an
gosh.
interview, but like a, feedback from a boss, like a,
Sucker punch. You
yeah,
just
sucker
weren't
punch.
expecting it. Yeah.
Here's a job review and it just crushed your spirits. Yeah.
And
Today we're actually part two of a three-part series on developing leaders, and we're going to be talking about the art of feedback.
yeah.
The art of feedback. Stephen Covey has said it takes humility to seek feedback. It takes wisdom to understand it, analyze it, and appropriately act on it.
Ooh. That's why we talked about in the last episode why humility is such a key
Yeah.
ground level
Lifeblood of leadership.
characteristic
Yeah.
needed for leaders. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It really applies to feedback.
Yeah. So again, today is part two of a three-part series on developing leaders. If you didn't catch part one, you can go back and watch that.
Yep.
Get caught up to speed. We're in part two, the art of feedback. And as a way of reminder, we just want to give a reminder to you guys as listeners. Bill and Jared, and we're here to help develop frontline leaders. Millennials, Gen Zs. Anyone who's in the role of leadership, or maybe who desires to learn a little bit more and grow in the area of leadership. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom, CEO of a business, but our niche is those millennials, Gen Z, kind of beginner leaders. We want to help serve as a resource for you and kind of share the lessons we've learned and kind of use our journey to help partner with you and yours.
Yeah, and a lot of the lessons that we've learned are all around the idea of strength of character.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of how-to formulas in here, but when it comes down to developing as a leader, it's all about developing your strength
Right.
in your character. So
Exactly.
So as Jared's saying, we're talking about feedback today, and I want to talk a moment before we get into how to deliver feedback, the importance of why is this a topic? Why are we talking about that? Why is feedback important? So first and foremost, feedback is necessary for others to see the potential of the growth that's needed, right? If you don't give them the feedback, they may have these blinders on and may not see. I don't know if you've ever gone over to someone else's house and you walk in like, oh, wow, these walls are kind of dirty. And the host goes, oh, yeah, I just been around this so long, I didn't notice how dirty my walls are. So and the next time you go over, they have them all nice and clean. It's when you have someone who's outside of your own patterns, habits, rituals, way of seeing things that gives that feedback, then they see the opportunity for that growth, for that potential for that growth, which goes right into the number two for importance of feedback is it does create opportunities for growth. Shines the light in this area that we need to grow in, and then you come up with a step, plan, action to grow and improve, right? And it enhances yourself as a character, as a leader, but for your employees, it makes them more valuable, and values are valuable because they're values, right?
Yeah. And that kind of leads to, the whole thought that feedback kind of precedes the coaching.
That's number three. Yeah.
Right.
So if you don't provide the feedback, where's the open door to coach, right? When I'm coaching employees at work to improve their performance in a work environment, I have what's called the mirror approach of coaching. We have a whole resource of analytics of how they're performing and what they're doing and how well they're doing it. And I go, this is where you are. This is how you're performing. This is our standard. Where's the gap and why is the gap, right? So providing that feedback gives them the opportunities to see the opportunities for growth. So
Yeah, I love the word coaching too, because I just yesterday coached our first softball season. Again, I'm doing the girls middle school softball team this year with a friend of mine, and the art of feedback is it's challenging and it's fun. But we just had a moment, multiple moments in our first game of the season, kind of a younger team, and 6th and 7th graders. So we don't even have really any 8th graders. Luckily, we had one that came down from the big team to help us with our pitching. But we had a play at third, and the girl who was playing third base, the ball's coming down the line and right down the line, and she scooped it and threw it to first, just quite not in time. The runner was safe, and a run scored. And so as a coach, after that inning was over, I said, hey, come here. I said, listen, you made a great play.
Yeah.
It was, you did exactly what Coach B and I were telling you to do.
Yep.
Scoop it, clean it, clean that play and whatnot. I said, however, next time when the ball's rolling on that foul line in the direction it was going foul. And so it was hard for her to hear that. She's like, oh man. And I'm like, no, you made the correct play. We had just told you if the ball comes to you, field it cleanly and get it to first, right? And get the out. But that if we didn't give her that feedback, next time she's not going to know.
And that's the other thing, not in our notes, but as you give feedback, people build their frame of reference of what to know, how to act, what to do. Mm-hmm. And as that grows, hopefully they act on it and they perform better as a result.
Well, again, the last point here before we jump into some of this is that, feedback should be filtered through the lens of adding value to others.
Absolutely.
Right. So in that moment of the coaching, story I'm sharing, it was a moment for me to say, I'm just going to add to your repertoire of knowledge for this game. But, the feedback's going to come in such a way where you're like, and you then you get frustrated. You got to be able to, see that growth, that potential.
Right.
So, but it's really good stuff.
That's so true. So true. So there's always a bias when it comes to feedback. Always. We all have our own perceived biases of what's important, what's not important. We all grew up in unique circumstances. We all think uniquely as a result of it. So being open ourselves as ones who give feedback, to be self-aware of that, and it helps us to negate it, right? So sometimes I will go to someone else at work and say, hey, I have this person. This is the feedback I'm going to give. Do you see it as accurate? Am I wording it correctly? Is there something missing that I should add? Is there something in there that shouldn't be? What's good about it? What's not so good about it? So I can help negate my own bias when I provide that feedback. So very important.
Yeah.
It can be, you have bias, but you can be negated.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we're going to jump into, again, the art of feedback, how to do this, right? And we're going to use the word healthy, how to give healthy feedback. In full disclosure, we're going to give you 5 things that we found from, I think her name is Nozomi Morgan, president and executive coach. I think it's Machiki Morgan Worldwide. So these next 5 things are credited to her. We've never met her. We don't know much about her. But
she's not paying us.
She's not paying us. But Nozomi, I think I'm getting your name right, Morgan. And this is just wonderful. So if you're ever listening, thank you so much for providing this. And we're just going to jump into it, give you the 5. We're going to comment, of course, for ourselves on this, and then add 1 or 2. And so that just wanted you guys to be aware, full disclosure. Nozomi Morgan of these 5 points. And the first one is this: set expectations for when feedback will be given. So that's kind of her number one. Hey, you want to give good, healthy feedback? Let's start by setting the expectations for when this feedback will be given. She says employees often worry about if they're doing well, and one way to curb this anxiety, right, is to give clear expectations for when the feedback is going to happen.
Right.
Maybe scheduling a regular weekly one-on-one. She says, she gives ideas like promising a check-in at the end of the project or sending a regular scheduled email. Constructive feedback, she says, are always ways to offer ongoing feedback. So.
Yeah, and if you build in feedback as a regular cadence to your coaching, then it's less stressful, it's less anxiety. They become a rhythm of the receiver's end, that they're just expecting it, right? And keep in mind that the feedback we're talking about is not just opportunities to improve, but also calling out what they did really well. Right. That is super important. We cannot negate that or forget about that. Oftentimes I've seen managers who just focus on, we got to improve this, we got to improve this, we got to get this, we got to improve our metrics, got to achieve the business goals. I'm like, all right, slow down. Let's put some gas in their tank saying, hey man, you are awesome at this, right? Okay, great job. Let's keep doing well there. Over here, we got an opportunity to focus on. Let's talk about that.
I would phrase it like this. The art of healthy feedback, it should always be wrapped with a little bit of encouragement. So when you're presenting feedback, like presenting like a present here, I'm going to give you this. Obviously, it's through the knowledge of I want to add value to this person, right? But I think when you're giving feedback, it should be wrapped in encouragement.
Almost like a sandwich, right? You have positive, opportunity, and then positive. You end a conversation on a good note, and it goes back to, people will remember, people will care I'm going to get this. I think about this.
People
don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. So, and that's part of that art of feedback is to making sure that they know that you care about them. And you're seeing the positive as well as the opportunities.
Yeah. And number 2, again, back to these 5 from Nozomi. She says, take a coaching approach. Hey, no kidding. That's what we've been talking about, right? When giving feedback. She goes on to say, coaching provides a friendly, motivational style to offering feedback compared to a harsh, dictatorial, like we talked about dictatorship versus coaching in the last, I think it was the last episode, right? She says encouragement, guidance, and teamwork genuinely show that the employee is valued and his or her success is important. So there you have it. There's her number 2, which is the same as the one that we just gave, which is taking that coaching approach.
And that reemphasizes what we've said in multiple episodes already before. We're a young podcast.
Right.
But this is so valuable. We've already touched on this several times in our episodes, right? That we want to make sure we're bringing something to the table to lift them up to a place where they've never been before, a greater performance level, greater character level, more confidence in themselves. That is the whole goal here. We're not here to tear down.
Right.
We're here to build up.
And I think too, when we're able to do this correctly, we're able to add value through the art of feedback. That's leveling up your influence.
Yeah,
it's taking your influence up a notch on the people that you're leading. So again, you've got this whole idea of setting expectations for when to give this feedback. Hey, it's coming. It's a regular cadence, is the word Bill used. Yep. You're taking a coaching approach. Number 2. And then she goes on to say, number 3, encourage employees, and there's that word encouragement that I was using, right? Encourage employees to seek feedback from other sources. Yeah. Okay, so what she means by this, she says feedback doesn't just have to come from a manager or a boss, right? Many companies offer peer mentor programs.
Correct.
These programs, should incorporate feedback cycles for employees and so on and so forth. So encourage employees to seek feedback from other sources.
So I got a story about this. I'm at a certain level in my company. I'm not a young fellow, as if you could tell if you're watching on YouTube.
He's old.
I'm old. And I have a goal of one more promotion before I retire, right? So I went around, I had a boss I trusted very well that would give me honest feedback, wouldn't color code it, wouldn't make it worse than it actually was, but would really speak value. I said, look, would you please go around and get one person from each of these different groups and ask them, when you think of Bill, what do you think of? What characteristic, what strengths, what abilities, what is Bill's brand, so to speak, right? And because I wanted to critique that and see if I was in people's minds ready for this next promotion or not. So, and it came in, and a lot of it was, yes, you have this, but you haven't had it long enough, right? Yeah. So keep on doing what you're doing. Add some more tools. Here are a couple of tools mentioned that you could add to your toolbox. And then if you do this for a couple more seasons, then yes, perhaps you would be very ready.
And all that feedback came from people that you were...
It came from people. I wanted them to feel safe, that they could give it anonymous. So I had them go through a boss of mine and who went around and thank goodness, if you're watching, thank you for taking the time to do all those questions and interviews to get my feedback. And he typed it up nicely and looked for common themes and let me have it. So if you're brave enough, it's worth it, right? So go and ask other people or have someone ask on your behalf, what is your brand? What do people think about when they hear your name?
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, it's really good. And the number 4 thing, again, Nozomi Morgan says, I love this one, avoid negative language.
Yeah.
She says language that discourages and excludes, such as I don't think and you shouldn't, right? That puts people on that defensive side of things and causes them to shut down and disregard your feedback. She says instead be encouraging by using phrases that start with, what if we looked at it a different way? Or maybe there are other options, or have you considered doing this? So I love her approach in this. I think it's really, really helpful to think through, especially if you tend to go to the negative first. And that's a character I think, for yourself to work on. But I know for me, sometimes when I'm looking at things, I'm like, oh, this is going to be this way. And I've had to help retrain my mind.
That's effort.
It takes a lot of effort, but I love the call out here that she gives, avoid negative language.
Yeah, it's kind of our human nature too, to remember the negative a lot more than we do the positive.
Oh yeah.
So one thing I would add to this is, if you collect feedback for yourself, or if you're giving feedback for someone else, record it.
Yeah.
And then go back and look at the good stuff. Don't forget the opportunities to grow, right? But look at what you're doing well and celebrate it, right? Or help them celebrate if you're delivering this feedback to develop a leader. Help them to realize, man, you're valuable. Thank you. You really brought this to the table and you're hitting it out of the park. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Now, okay, let's go work on this opportunity. You see how that kind of just, got to write it down and you got to remind people of it, because we tend to fake or forget about it. It's just our human mindset of we hone in on the negative.
Yeah. 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 And then number 5, last one from, again, Nozomi Morgan. She says, be specific.
Yeah.
She said, vague feedback doesn't work. For example, telling John that he has a lousy people skills is not constructive or effective, right?
Yeah.
Instead, describe specific example of behavior that you've observed and explain the effects it has on you and others. Then provide clear suggestions on how to do things a little bit differently. So be specific.
Yeah, and I would tack on to that, coming up with a very specific plan of action based on the feedback. I'm going to do this. You're going to inspect me here, here, and here to make sure I'm doing it. If I accomplish this 80% of it or 60%, it's about progress, not perfection when it comes to feedback. Remember, it's about progress, not perfection when it comes to feedback.
Absolutely.
So make sure in the plan that you create, when you give feedback, is that, okay, you have a measurement of success and you have checks and balances to make sure the plan is being acted on.
I love it.
So,
yeah, I would add to just one more to this whole list of things is use inclusive language.
oh my gosh, yes.
So, and we mentioned this before, but it really sets the tone for if you come into a meeting. So you're doing this, and I'm seeing you do this, but if you use we, you can pull from your organization's values.
Yes.
Right? It makes you sound like you're including this person on the team. So that inclusive language, even when giving feedback, especially if you got to give feedback that might sting a little, that's going to help the person receive it.
I love that. I've been watching a masterclass from Coach K from Duke University, and he has a whole class on values-based leadership. And he talks about the we mentality. We, you didn't fail. We as a team,
Right.
we didn't win. Yeah. We as a team didn't perform. We as a team didn't bring it, right? Mm-hmm. We as a team have an opportunity. So it's all about, of course there's individual. I mean, there's each player, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the overall win and success, it's the we mindset.
Yeah.
And that's why he was such a successful coach in his career.
Yeah, and again, you talk about coaching or even parenting, like, we've seen these parallels, and a lot of us who did, sports when we were younger or whatever, or in the coaching, realm even now, it's really fun and funny when you're teaching the team aspects to younger players.
Yeah.
So again, like we had a handful of first-time softball players, and they're learning that when the coach says, "Okay, we're going to do this round of ground balls," if they're not each fielded cleanly and thrown to first cleanly and caught cleanly, then it's a 30-second wall squat. They're like, "Oh, for the player, like for the whole team." So you're only as good as your weakest link. Yeah. And so that's a way to incorporate, those team mentalities into your. This started years ago when we were kids, so we're just doing this in adult language, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So inclusive language is huge. So Bill, you had some thoughts from what's his name again? We don't really mention him too much on this podcast.
Yeah, some guy named John Maxwell.
Never heard of him.
Doohickey? No, John Maxwell. He has some thoughts on feedback that we wanted to bring to the table as well. One, feedback is a gift.
Ooh, yep.
It's a gift you provide others to let them know how they are doing. It is meant to raise people up, right? And that's a gift, not to tear down. Tear down, that's not a gift, right? You're to bring value to them, right? It's like a present you're giving.
Well, you think about it. When you give a gift to someone, like my parents used to always remind me, it's brings you more joy to give than to receive.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like when you give someone a gift, like you can't wait for them to. I was and still am, the husband and the father who's like, in many ways, I'm like, I don't want to wait. Like I want them to just open it now. Like I want her to get this now, today, and I got to remind myself, no, it's not Christmas yet. It's like it's still 3 days away. My wife's always reminded me of that, but it's more of a joy to give than to receive. And so if we approach giving feedback like that, it's going to be pretty easy to wrap it in encouragement.
Yeah. And if you're back in our previous episode about, care and candor, or connect before you correct. Or,
it all plays a part.
It all kind of hands together. So if you help an employee grow or an individual grow in your organization, to grow their perspective of, hey, I'm not here to tear you down.
Right.
I'm here to build you up. Here's the feedback. It becomes much more palatable. It's not confrontational, right? It becomes enjoyable. And if you have a vision and a direction behind that you're passionate about, it really just moves the ball down the field. Feedback does in that environment. So number one was feedback as a gift. Number two, provide constructive feedback more easily. To provide constructive feedback more easily, get in the right mindset, which is what we were just talking about. I've often shared that every person in your circle of influence is asking 3 questions about you. This is John Maxwell. And he says those questions are, can you help me? Do you care about me? Can I trust you? Your people are asking that about you as a leader. Can you help me? Do you care about me? And can I trust you? And if you can get a yes to those 3 questions, you're in a healthy situation to provide healthy feedback. Right?
That's the correct mindset too.
Yeah, that's huge.
You're thinking through it.
Yeah, and third and last from John is keep your feedback objective and descriptive.
Which goes along with Nozomi's as well, and our own of just making sure it's specific and you got a plan.
Yeah. So if it's factual, it's not based on opinion, it's not based on emotion, as leaders, we experience frustration for our people sometimes of too many opportunities to be working through. But if we focus and let those so we don't react, we respond when we give this feedback and we're factual about it and we kind of change our mindset, that makes the feedback a whole lot more digestible, a whole lot easier for them to take ownership of, and a whole lot easier for them to act on. Yeah. So,
and I would remind us too. We're in part 2 of a 3-part series of how to develop leaders.
Yeah.
Right. So if again, our whole approach is adding value to others, right? Leveling up our influence, but we're trying to reproduce ourselves in other people as far as it pertains to leadership skills and abilities.
Right.
And so as we're doing that, and we're thinking through the art of feedback, it should be through the lens of you're trying to develop this person, help develop and coach them to their potential, and help them see that. And so I guess, when you're looking at developing leaders and adding value to them, that lens is going to help you with all of these different tips we've been talking about today.
Yeah, and if I like previous episodes, I said, I don't have an ESPN bone in my body, so I was kind of surprised I came up with a coach analogy myself. But another coach I would highly recommend you learn from, buy his book, study, is John Wooden.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Great coach.
He has been labeled one of the greatest coaches of all time. Just because the impact that he had. And he also was a mentor to our favorite leader, John Maxwell.
Yeah, exactly,
so he's kind of the master of the master class sort of thing.
So we want to leave you with an application challenge. We kind of do this at the end of our episodes, at least we try to. So we want to be a little more consistent with you in doing that, providing, hey, here's an action point. So we're going to call that an application challenge. Yeah. And that is, and we're going to do it too, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm going to try and do this too, but identify a person or persons who you need to be maybe a little more intentional with your feedback for them.
Yeah. Take notes from this episode, be intentional about it. Yeah, and we will too, right? Yeah. So it's all about growing, and we're here to help you grow in your leadership journey. So, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us this episode. We appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your time. Take care.
See you next time.
Bye.